Welcome. My name's Andrew Stuck. I'm one of the co-producers of Walk, Listen, Create. This is a walking arts and local communities event, part funded by the EU Create programme. We would like to acknowledge them and thank them for their funding. I'm now going to literally pass you over to Clara Gari from Nau Côclea in Catalonia, who's our Spanish partner. As I say, if you want to be involved in the walk program in any way, we're posting in the chat a link to a form in which we need you to fill in a bit more information about you, because obviously we only have you as a sort of registered person. Many of you we know, but many of you we don't. So even if we know you, please can you pop an answer in the form? That'd be really helpful. Clara, it's your show. Over to you, Clara Gari.
My show. Good evening, everybody. I'm very sorry for being late. Do you remember when you were kids and you went to school and said that the electricity was down and that's why you didn't do your homework? That happens in reality. So the electricity went down here and now I am running with my phone data. So hope, cross fingers, that everything will be all right. I'm very happy to see so many friends here. And I think it's a very historical confluence, a very historical moment, because it may be the beginning of a research group about what we are asking today. And we are reflecting and we are thinking, how do we document our performance as walking artists? So for that, I will explain after who we have invited and what are we going to do. But before, we will have a small intervention of Yannis Ziogas and Geert Vermeire, which are the directors of our network. And they will clarify and explain what will be the nodes of this very big network we are building in Europe and all around the world, and how these nodes can join our network and how we can be all connected. So I first give word Yannis Ziogas and Geert to explain that to all of us.
Hello, thank you for being here and being part of that. Geert, if you want to start first this time.
Of course, in the name of Yannis and myself, and starting this second year of this walk project, Walking Arts and Local Communities, we are very happy to see you all. And as Clara already said, this project is not only about bringing people together, but bringing efforts together to make this fascinating form of art, walking arts, even more known and important. As we will do today as well, look into the potential, the transforming potential for communities around the world. The initiative we will launch today is called The Nodes, and it's going along with the call for the Press by Encounter, about which Yannis will tell us in a minute more. I will share you some links in the chat to share and to look at. Is inviting groups and collectives. Not only is this project much about collectivism and collaboration, but we are very interested in extending our core group with 5 countries and organizations and artists in these 5 countries, which are Greece, Portugal, Spain, France, and Belgium, to make a bigger family, even a bigger family of walking art. And so we would like to invite the groups and collectives and organizations around Europe and in the world to be part of our efforts. So we are looking for groups and organizations that are interested or are already doing activities with walking arts and with communities to support the International Center for Artistic Research and Practice in Walking Arts. We are establishing a central hub in Prespa, embraced by the partners in the other countries. So the organizations or collectives you may be part of in walking arts, but as well in other disciplines, like in social practices or arts in academia, well-being, education or technology, are very welcome to join in this mutual inspiration and collaboration we want to launch during these 4 years and beyond these 4 years. And we are looking specifically for people and collectives and groups that can support our intent to start community-based innovations, and with our particular interest in crisis, underdevelopment, and isolated landscapes and areas. So we offer you to be part of our growing network, and will be able to showcase your activities and be part of the online events that we organize as today. We will also organize specific online training and mapping the walking arts community throughout Europe and the world. Promoting what you do, including you will be part of a feature-length documentary exploring the WALC project and its global impact. And we would like to share with you an exhibition, ask you to organize an exhibition in your locale, and as well to take part in the final exhibition we will organize in 2027. I will share with you now the links, and we would appreciate very much if you can share them as well with your networks, and to become part of our family. So Yannis, would you want to add something about what will be the next open call for Prespa?
Yes. Okay, taking that from there, I have to first of all say for those who have not been here with us or have not read the argument and the call. Walk and local community is a culmination of what is going on in Prespa for a number of years, where forces have been joined in order to work on walk. But at this point, with the walk and local communities, we are focused on the way walk is watching, is becoming part of the sustainability of rural communities at risk. In a way very specific, meaning that the nodes don't have maybe to be in one of these communities like we are in Prespa, but they have to have worked towards that aim so that we can communicate with them the experience. We live in a period that is really very harsh. We all know that, especially with the recent, with all the recent political developments. And somehow we believe that we are in a position where we can really work we have to work as artists, socially, why not to say that politically, towards something that is needed, so to say. Of course, there are many things that are in need in life and in society. We have focused on that. This is our focus. Having that as a general concept, and having already created a bibliography We have a big volume of 600 pages. We will have another one in a few months, 2 other ones, meaning that there is already in that effort a body of work and projects and mentality that has been created. Meaning that we are, of course, this is not an enclosed system, but it is a contribution of hundreds of, by now, artists, theoreticians, who have addressed these topics in our encounters the 3 previous years. So having that, meaning the subject of what we do, we don't do generally watching, we do watching and local communities, rural communities in crisis. And of course, what we have already accomplished all these years, we are searching for nodes who can work and develop these ideas. Nodes is the one part. The other part is what happens in the actual place, which is Prespa, in the encounters, and of course in what the other partners are initiating in their own entities, in Vermeire, in Nau Côclea, in Guimaraes, and in Gazlu. So what we have created then an open call that fits to these purposes. There is a need because of the requirements of the program that we are, for that to be in Europe and not to be in one, and correct me, Geert, if I'm not addressing that well, not to be in one of the 5 countries that are already participating, meaning Greece, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, 4. Yes.
Mhm.
So this is...
There is a priority, Yannis, for the new countries in Europe that are not already part of the group, but we consider as well others to.
But there is this priority. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So this is more or less, you have the open call, you have the links. We will see what the response is. It is a very, in a way, a very innovative, something that can lead to something, meaning a network of communicating energies. We will see how it happens. We are optimistic that this is going to lead to something that will take the discourse further. Okay, so Clara, if you want to continue with.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think we all of us want to meet there in Prespa, and that is going to be a wonderful moment for all of us to meet there. And today we are starting a kind of sharing a discussion on research, or sharing a research by discussing. And as it was announced in WALC Listen Create platform, the anecdote of Richard Long 30 years ago was the good example to start this discussion. 30 years ago, Richard Long had a command from a center, an art center, a contemporary art center specialized in sculpture in nature, the Center of Art and Nature of Huesca. And he was asked to do one of his famous circles. At that moment, the ones that have some age can remember that in the 90s, it was the big moment of big collections, and every city and every museum and every contemporary art center wanted a collection. And Richard Long was asked to do this piece for the collection of this center in Huesca. What Richard Long did was, okay, I'll do the piece, but I'll go along to the place. I will go to the Maladeta, in the foot of the Maladeta peak, which is the highest in the Pyrenees, and I will do my piece there, and I will send you the photo when I finish. So some days after, Richard Long departed alone, and some days after, the center received the proof that the piece was in place, because Richard Long had sent the photo. And 30 years later, the photo is the only remaining of what had happened, because, of course, the wild nature of the very high places in the Pyrenees has not respected Richard Long piece. And all that we have from this walking work or performing work or conceptual work is that collection of photos or that particular photo. This suggested us this idea of in first instance, how do we document our walking work, our walking art? But even more deeply, what is the piece? What is the artwork? The walking or the documentation, or what the documentation stands for the real moment and for the genuine moment in which the real piece was conceived or was made or was performed. So we are starting today a series of conversations about this topic, and we are even expecting that some of you, because among us, we know a lot of people that is working in walking art and is working with all those kinds of things. Maybe it will be also the start of a very interesting online discussion that we can bring maybe to Prespa. This is very utopical, but why not? So today, to start, we have brought here Ernesto Pujol. Ernesto Pujol, that is, I'm very grateful and happy to invite you, Ernesto, and that you have accepted our invitation, is based in Philadelphia. He is a social choreographer, and he is known for group walking performances, empathically addressing sacred collective stories and fragile landscapes under threat, ethically exploring and performatively revealing the psychic architecture of peoples and places globally. You can read Sighted Body, Public Visions, Silence, Stillness, and Walking as Performance Practice. And you can also read Walking Art Practice, Reflections on Social Paths. Both are available, and a lot of different articles in magazines and reviews. Pujol is also the founder of the Listening School, a traveling project of intimate workshops and contemplative public listening experiences. He has an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and currently lives in Philadelphia, writing, giving lectures, and performing. Welcome, Ernesto. Very happy to have you here. And now we want really to listen you about your work, but also about this particular question. How do you document your working works? And if the documentation is for you part of the artwork or just documentation about it?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clara, and thank you for having me. And it's good to see some old friends like Claudia Saiski and De Forest. So I'll add, what I'll say is I'll add even more questions right now. So let me start by sharing my screen. So I would say I start with these three questions. The first one is not to take the walk for granted. So my first question is, what are you actually documenting? What are you actually documenting? Is it a walk? We're calling it a walk. Or do you want to nuance it some more and call it a pilgrimage? Or do you want to nuance it even more and call it ritual, a ritual, a moment of activism? Are you enacting a transformation? So to me, the first question that guides documentation is, what are we actually documenting? Can you define it for yourself? No one else needs to know this, but can you define for yourself as a maker, as the creator, perhaps, of this walk, what are you actually documenting? Because that will help you achieve a very particular focus. The second thing I ask myself, and I invite you to consider, is what form do you want it to have? Do you want it to have a kind of pedestrian documentation, what you might have been taught in art school, you know, taking the photograph of a work of art? So pedestrian documentation, very regular, very standard documentation. Do you want it to be art photography? Do you want this image, let's call it an image, to have a second life as an art photograph that may or may not be collectible or for sale? Or perhaps with these images of your walk or your pilgrimage or your ritual or your activism or your transformation, you are going to create what I'm going to call a second work of art, perhaps an installation. You're going to show a collection of these images installed in a certain way, and you're going to walk into a space and be surrounded by images of a body or a group of bodies walking, and you might call that installation art. Or even more ambitious than that is the form of your documentation a second experience. Do you want there to be two walks? The walk that you did and that perhaps some people participated in with you or witnessed you doing. And then there is this afterlife, this second life, this second walk, this shadow walk, this spectral walk, this ghostly walk, where your so-called documentation is creating almost as like a second walk. That's a second question I ask myself. And then finally, who is it for? Not the walk, but the documentation. Who is this so-called documentation for? And what effect do you want to have on them? Is this for collectors? Is this for a first audience, a second audience, a historical archive? Is it for the people who saw the walk, who participated in the walk, and they get to see it again as a relic? Is it for a whole new audience? So, because there are really two audiences, the audience of the so-called live walk or single or participatory, and then the audience to the documentation. So to me, that's where I start to guide how I'm going to document this. And then the second thing is there are stages to documenting a walk. For example, someone commissions you to do a walk, as Clara was saying. It's very clear in your head what you're going to do, but it's only clear in your head. No one else has seen this. So, and yet people want to see the walk before it happens. Perhaps you have a funder, a museum, a university, an art center, a community that has asked you to walk among them, within it, around it, outside, or with it as a destination or as a point of departure. They want to see your walk before it happens. And so do you create, as artist Janine Antoni says, as an act of generosity, do you create an iconic image of the walk before the walk happens? For example, this is an image that I created a walk in 2010 called, the walk was called Awaiting. It has 70 participants. So, and we needed to promote the walk, both to recruit the participants, but also to recruit audience. And so we created this iconic image where you have me, many years ago, looking at the site of the walk. And then out of that image, so here's the image that I created as again, I was quoting Janine Antoni, who says sometimes the artist has to be ahead of the audience with an act of generosity. And so here's an image that I create ahead of the walk to prefigure the walk as a recruitment tool, both for participants and audience. And then I will open a second image so that you see how that image was then used. So here's the image turned into a poster. The walk hasn't happened, but the walk is already creating a kind of preview documentation for the sake of its life, for the sake of the walk that is going to happen. So, and in so doing, I am making all kinds of choices about what is it that I want to convey to you about the walk that hasn't happened. And in this case, it's a solitary figure at night looking at a classical building where the walk, it's one of the sites of the walk, in a kind of contemplative manner, kind of saying something about the spirit of the walk. So this is a group walk that we did in Hawaii, on the island of Hawaii, back in 2011, where again, this is an image of the walk before the walk. It was commissioned by the Contemporary Art Museum of the city of Honolulu. And they wanted a piece about their city. And after 3 years of research and 2 trips to the island, and many conversations with curators, artists, and communities, we selected 12 neighborhoods. And then in the end, we had 19 walkers from the different neighborhoods. And we distributed them among the 12 neighborhoods for a one-day walk for an uninterrupted 12 hours. And the way that the walk was found was that there was a map that was freely given to citizens, and you could find the walk happening at the same time for 12 hours during a long day on the Pacific, and you could move between the neighborhoods and find the walkers. But this image is an image before the walk happens to, again, prefigure the walk for the museum, for audiences, as an invitation for media. And then we had, because it's 12 neighborhoods, 19 performers divided between 12 neighborhoods, we had 3 photographers who were recruited. One was the official museum photographer, and the other 2 were volunteer photographers who had the map, had the neighborhoods mapped out, and distributed themselves throughout the day through the 12 neighborhoods, taking long distance shots from these walkers, so that my instructions were, I don't want you to obstruct the experience of the viewer. I want you to arrive to the neighborhood where the walk is happening for 12 hours, and with a long distance lens, without the walker becoming self-conscious that you are documenting them. I'd like you to take a number of photographs that captures a moment of that walk in that neighborhood. And so here we have 2 walkers walking through Honolulu's Chinatown. And there are moments in their walk, these 2 are passing each other. This is a young walker at the Carnegie Library. This is a walker at the palace of the last queen of Hawaii, Queen Liliuokalani. This is a walker at the natatorium. This is a walker at the Honolulu Bay. This is a walker outside the Museum of Natural History. She's a native indigenous walker. And they're all also holding a small red book. This is a walker at the Honolulu Botanic Garden. This is a baobab tree, a walker by a baobab tree. And And so they're holding this little book. The walk is in silence, 19 walks in 12 neighborhoods, simultaneous in silence. And yet these books contain the native Hawaiian language. And so the walker is given permission, if you will, that they may stop at any point of the walk and open the book and read a word that translates the landscape to the native perspective. And they're also wearing red because it was the national color of Hawaii, of the monarchy of Hawaii. Before Hawaii, the monarchy, which was a constitutional monarchy, was deposed through a coup, and the island became a U.S. territory and eventually a U.S. state. So this is very ambitious documentation, 3 photographers, 12 sites, 19 performers. I also don't want to show the public. In this particular instance, but in most instances, I'm not interested in capturing the public looking at the walker. I want the public is not performing, not here. The public is witnessing. The public perhaps may be walking at a certain distance or imitating the walker. And so I don't want to consume my own audience in that sense. I want to respect my audience and leave them outside the frame because also when I show you this again as a document, not as art photography and not as a second walk, but as a document, I still want you to have a sense or a taste of what it was to see this single body walking a landscape. I want you to have a body-to-body, as far as I can get, experience of that. Can you see this Capitol building? Yes? Okay. So this was the image that I created for this walk, that solitary image at night. 70 performers at the state capitol building in Salt Lake City, Utah, and 70 performers walking up and down the hill, most of them women, who began this walk that was 70 performers, 70 walkers strong. They began it in their homes. They got up that morning, got dressed in white, and began to walk from wherever they lived, 70 different places, to this one place of confluence, this wall. And there you see, for a moment, the public in the background. And then they begin to ascend Capitol Hill, and they will spend the next 12 hours doing this overnight. Again, 3 photographers, all volunteers, all instructed to be at a distance, to not interrupt the experience for the public, to move as a pedestrian would, not to run around with a camera that is visible, but to walk calmly, discreetly, and position themselves in different places throughout different times of the day so as to capture moments of this contemplative walk, of this community, mostly women, a very feminist project about the passivity of women within patriarchy, within traditional religions, and within America. I'm going to fast forward it so you see evening falling. Walks like these that last 12 hours, that last 2 days, that last 24 hours produce thousands of photographs, certainly hundreds. And then you sit back as an editor, and here's evening falling, and here you see how high we are on the hill and the lights of the city below. walks like these produce hundreds to thousands of photographs, and then you have to sit back as an editor to capture an essence. I may be showing you right now 100, yeah, I'm showing you 120 some photographs of what may be 600 photographs. And I try to do that edit soon after the walk is done, so that I'm still in the spirit of the walk, that I have choreographed, that I have lived, that I have performed as well as one more body within that group. And then I'm going to show you a very different walk. Can you see this pillar? Yes?
Yes.
So this is a totally different walk. This is much earlier in my walking practice. So I'm going to show you a completely staged walk. So this is a walk, and that is me, but 20 years ago, where I have been working in the southern United States. I have been researching racism and the Civil War that tore the country apart in the 1860s. And I have come across this cemetery that is filled with the Civil War dead of the South, people who were defending slavery, people who wanted slavery to continue as the basis of agriculture. And so I have been visiting this site. I have been walking the site. And I have been studying Civil War photography. And so after doing a number of walks, of my walks, that no one saw and will never see on the site, I return to stage a walk. And I returned with an assistant who's not a photographer. I am the photographer. And I stage every single step of the way, which is to say, I choose the site, many sites throughout the place, and they are all about the death of empire, the end of empire, with fallen columns and a kind of decrepitude, and rows upon rows of dead. I choose the many different tableaus. I look through the lens. I put the body of my assistant in place to figure out where I want my body to be. I remove that body, I place my body there, and then I ask my assistant to take the shot. The point of this, I had my many walks in the site. The point of it is to take this very difficult to access space, that was highly symbolic of the desire of the United States to be a kind of new global empire in the 19th century. Spain was a dying empire and so on, and kind of ends in the Spanish-American War of 1898. So I'm creating a stage walk, to then take this walk somewhere. I'm also using words in glass from letters of the time, and I stage it as an installation so that people never see this walk. No one ever sees this walk live. No one walks it with me. But I then take it and I create a photo-based installation with words in glass, images of different scales, in a room that is circular and wraps itself around you like a 19th century diorama, and people get a shadow walk and a sense of this place, completely distilled. And then one last walk I'll show you, because I'd love to hear from you. let's see, okay. It's a circular walk that I did for Crossing the Line, the Festival of the French Institute, Alliance Française. And they invited me to do a walk inside a space. And I was able to secure 40 walkers who begin one by one to enter the space, ringing a bell. And they are walking a circle, but they're walking it backwards and they're walking it counterclockwise. And of course, it's like being in a fishbowl with these balconies overlooking the space. So, and so basically, the one photographer, and this was a professional photographer hired by the Institute, documents us as we enter and exit the space. And we did this for 24 hours so that there is a continuous human circle, like a whirlpool going around and around and around in this space, all night long, all day long. At the center was a stone from the river. So I'd like to, I mean, I have, there's 30 years of walks to show you, but I'd love to hear from you for a moment if you have any comments or questions, and if not, then I can show you one or two more projects.
Yes, I think we have some minutes for questions and comments, and I think that what you have presented gives topic for a lot of discussion. So if anyone wants to start, otherwise I'll do myself. Because by seeing that beautiful scenarios, that beautiful presentations, so well prepared and so well thought, in which every participant is a piece, like a chess game, it makes me think of walking as representation.
Sure.
Which would bring us more to what to say, to dance, to contemporary dance, or to theater. But of course, there is another walking art that has nothing to do with representation, but with presence. And my question is there any point where this presence and representation do meet? Is there any point where both things act and do an agency in a way that collaborate?
Every point. I would say that, I mean, this is not theater or dance in the sense that there's a choreography that somebody has learned and is simply enacting it. First of all, each and every one of these performers is a citizen of that place. So that the 70 mostly women were all citizens of Salt Lake City. The 19 walkers in Honolulu were all people who live in Honolulu. I don't bring in a company. I go to that place. I engage in a dialogue, in research about the history of that city, that landscape, that community, or those communities. I issue an open call. Most of the time, artists are less than 50%. They look like artists, but they're whatever an artist may be, professionally trained. But they're the bodies of the place, and the workshops that then happen are about deep presence. All of these walks are representational because a community has said to me, I want you to come here and create my portrait. I want you to come here and, if you will, paint a portrait, sculpt a portrait, manifest a portrait that embodies our history, an issue, a concern, a set of challenges. And so you're right, this is not the kind of socially engaged art practice where there is no separation between the viewer and the walker, or the lead walker and some spontaneous walkers that you pick along the way. This is a kind of mongrel practice, hybrid practice that is saying, no, we're enacting a portrait here that the people of this place have commissioned me to do. I've been entrusted with a kind of likeness, and I'm going to train you in how to walk, and I'm going to we're going to design something that creates an essence of this place. And the 70 participants or the 40 participants or the 12 participants are deeply present. You cannot be in silence walking over and over again the same floor, the same landscape, the same building, without sooner or later going into psychic space. You know, because all you're doing is a kind of circular, almost Sufi-like whirling. And at some point, if you're walking that same space for 12 hours, you've seen it. You've seen it once, twice, thrice. And at some point, you start walking something else. And at some point, you start walking the invisible, even as you remain visible. So, so it is representational on purpose. It is not a kind of, and it is an exploration, but through poetics, through metaphor making. And there's no question that there's also a play with archetypes and a play with not just archetype, but this effort at timelessness, at the visible invisible collapsed, at seeing and then seeing within the seeing, and at not consuming any of it, because very few people can watch from beginning to end a 48-hour walk. You know, you can just glimpse at it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very clear and it's really fascinating. And I see here a lot of people that works with communities and that works with what we could also call social choreography. I would like very much to hear their point of view. For example, Claudia's.
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much. Really fascinating. I mean, I probably my question goes similar to what Clara just tried to say, is I'm not 100%, what I'm not sort of clear is how important is the walk in it all, or could it be also something else that's static or something? Because I found very, very interesting that documentation before it all happened. Yeah. So, which is quite different from kind of things I would be doing, or maybe Richard Long is doing. And so that you don't know exactly what happened. And, you know, the fact that you dress people up in a certain color, I mean, that makes them performers, even if they are from the locality. Yeah. Because, I mean, you also have community performances, and of course the performers are from the locality, but I don't think that therefore they are less performers just because they come from a place rather than being flown into Honolulu. So I guess, yeah, I'm sort of almost been quite naughty and so ask what makes it different from any other performance where you bring in lay people that are dressed up in some form, and then because the photography is highly important. I mean, basically, would the whole thing happen if you didn't have the photographers? I know, I stopped now.
No, that's a great question. Like I said, number one, they're the bodies of place. And when you see your neighbor, friend, sister, brother performing, you have bridged the abyss between the so-called trained artist and the civilian body. So what you need to know is that those, again, these are not trained artists. These are not artists who flew in or arrived, you know, in cars. These are people from those communities who have agreed to perform themselves. The content of the performance is also the content they have given me as their choreographer, so that after holding many conversations with Mormon women, women of the Mormon Church and American religion, women who used to belong, ex-Mormon women, and as they bring over and over again the issue of passivity, of patriarchy, of having to wait for their husband, to wait for their minister, to wait for their bishop, to wait for one of the 12 apostles who leads their church to tell them what to do, suddenly I am entrusted with, oh, okay, your life is one of waiting. And that becomes the performance. We're going to wait. We're going to do this thing you do in secret, in hiding, in silence, but we're going to do it public. It's interesting. I think that socially engaged art practice has split in many directions. And there is perhaps a taste right now, and what I hear is a lot of this taste of making it less indeed identifiable, less of that barrier between art starts here and a marathon starts here, or a you know, a nature walk. And that's fantastic. I think that there is room at the table for all the different kinds of walks. I happen to work with communities that want to earmark their walk in a certain way. So that if they want to work with someone who's simply going to say, okay, we're going to walk the woods today, and it's going to take 6 hours, and bring comfortable shoes and a good jacket and a raincoat, that is another choreographer. I work with communities that say, no, we want to enact our history, put it in a kind of public stage, and honor it and preserve it, and go back to that Joseph Beuys moment of everyone is an artist, and go back to that John Dewey, the American educator moment. The life of common people, the life of the pedestrian, the life of the factory worker is also art. And these colors that they choose, I don't choose the colors, also come from the community's wardrobe, so that after, for example, when the Hawaiian Native people chose to dress in red, the color of their ancestors, we went to a homeless store that sells very cheap charity clothing, and that's where we found the wardrobe that they wore. And there's a certain pride and a certain dignity to taking that daily experience in that community and seeing it as something identifiable as art, you know, so that these people want to see their life as art in a very classical way, if you will. And these are choices that they're making.
Ernesto, it's fascinating, but I think we have to leave it here because
Yeah.
our meeting has to last 1 hour. But
Sure.
remember, you and everybody, because there was a question for you in the chat that of course will be answered. But everybody remember that it is just the beginning. This is just the beginning, and we are searching for a small group that is interested in this particular aspect. How do you document your working art, or is the documentation part of the work, as it was the case of Ernesto? So Ernesto, you have been the first. Being the first has always some inconveniences, but it has been really magic because you joined both things, and in the explanation you have given now to us, it is really very clear how presence and representation meet, join, and collaborate in only one. I am very sorry to be the one that has to say goodbye to everybody. I will stay here for an hour or more. But if you are particularly interested in this topic, we can make a small research group. So let me say to you goodbye. Thank you. Hundreds, thousands of thanks, Ernesto. It was really fascinating. And also thank you to all of you that have not been able to express your ideas, but that will be doing that during the next sessions, I hope. Goodbye to everybody.